So our next speaker is Julie Humphreys. Julie comes to us from Second Harvest Inland Northwest. And Julie is going to be talking to us about the challenge of, in our community, we have a high rate of obesity and yet a high rate of hunger. So please help me welcome Julie.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It's nice to be here. I look out and Erin said she saw so many familiar faces. I came down from Spokane, so I don't see as many, but Holly Seiler, my partner, is here from Second Harvest from our distribution center in Pasco, and she's familiar with a lot of you, so I hope you'll follow up with her if you have questions and talk with her later on. I did live in the Tri-Cities about 30 years ago and worked on two TV stations here, Keeper and KView. So for those of you who were here 30 years ago and witnessed that, I apologize right now. So I know people send, this is where we come to learn television storytelling skills. Now I tell stories for Second Harvest, which are all stories of hunger and food assistance and hunger solutions, hunger relief. So I'm passionate about it. There's a lot going on in this area. And are you going to run the slides for me? Okay, so I'll just kind of, I think it'll be self-explanatory here, but want to spend a few minutes explaining what first of all, food insecurity is. And really, you have to back up and look at food insecurity before you look at hunger. USDA has a description here of food insecurity, but really it's the lack of consistent, dependable access to enough food to live a healthy, active life. Basically, you don't know where your next meal is coming from. And food insecurity can then lead to hunger, and hunger is the word we all know and we all relate to. Hunger is a physiological condition. It has to do with hormones and your body regulating, telling you when you need to eat to keep your major organs and your system going. So that is hunger. We look at hunger, many of us in the room, I would guess, in a very different way from the people who are truly food insecure, the way they look at it. We might look more at psychological hunger, and that is the desire to eat caused by emotions, stress, boredom, sadness, happiness. Thursday evening and your favorite TV show is on and you can't watch it without that bowl of popcorn and all the butter and a box of Milk Duds, right? So that is habit. So habit, emotions, all the different reasons why we eat when we're truly not hungry. But that's a form of hunger, the psychological hunger. She did mention that we have a problem with obesity and overweight in our country, a very big problem, and that is food related as well. I'll touch on that a little bit, but not as much, other than to say that we have really stopped listening to the physiological signs of hunger in our bodies, and that's part of the problem that's got us to the overweight and obesity problem. So I like to think of like a hunger scale, and maybe this will help you think about yourself. And how many times today, who said to themselves or out loud, "I'm so hungry, I'm hungry"? Come on, at least once a day. I do it probably 3 or 4 times a day, right? We say it so naturally. And I often say, "I'm starving." And on the hunger scale, the number 1 is you are starving. And when you're starving, you're weak, you're dizzy. But it's something we say. It's a different kind of starving than people that are truly food insecure. The bottom of that hunger scale, and I don't have a slide on this, is 10. So you're 1 through 10, and you're so full that you feel sick. That's a 10, okay? In the middle is 5. Somewhere during the day today, you're probably satisfied. You're neither hungry nor full, but it's just a state of where you are. And going back to babies and their basic needs, if you think about how a baby eats or how the caregiver feeds a baby, babies eat naturally. They eat when they're hungry. They eat when they're about at a 3 or a 4 on the scale, going up to that 1 of starving. 3 and 4 is you're pretty hungry, your stomach's growling a little bit, so you're starting to feel a little bit hungry. They eat at that time before they're starving or very hungry, low on energy and cranky. They don't wait till they're that 1 or 2, or the caregiver doesn't allow them to, or you pay for it, right? So children and babies eat more naturally. They listen more to their psychological or their physiological cues, and that's something that we are trying to get back to doing. People who are truly food insecure don't have that option. They can't just eat when they listen to those cues because they don't have access to good food and they're constantly in a state of 1 or 2. They're always starving, weak, dizzy, very hungry, cranky, low energy, lots of stomach growling. That is a constant chronic state that they live in that causes all kinds of health problems, emotional problems, etc. I should also mention that you can be, malnourishment is a condition that you can have. You don't have to be hungry to be malnourished. That's a matter of eating the right foods, the foods that have the right nutrients. So we have a big problem in our country with people being malnourished, even though they're not hungry. That's just eating the wrong foods and not the right foods to continue growing. So what are we doing about it? Let's take a look at the next slide. Most of our numbers here that I want to show you come from what's called Feeding America. It is the nation's leading hunger relief and food rescue network. There's 200 food banks or food distribution centers around the country. Second Harvest is one of them that feed 46 million people through food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, etc. Feeding America also works on education, research, advocacy, and policy. And so they come up with these numbers, they monitor them regularly and put them out for us. And they've come up with what's called the food security rates. Remember, or food insecurity rates. Food insecurity being that state of not having access, dependable, consistent access to enough good, healthy food to live an active life. Across the nation, that rate is about 15%. Here in Washington State, if you look down, you can see the number is about 13.7. And then this slide narrows it down to Benton and Franklin counties. We're a little below the national average, which is a good thing, of the rate of number of people who are food insecure. In Benton County, 12.4%, Franklin County, 9.2%, and then you can see some nearby communities below. This Map the Meal Gap is, they update that every couple of years. This is 2014. I think they're working on the 2016, but they're probably fairly consistent. And if anything, those numbers have gotten higher, the number of people in our country who are truly food insecure. Food is such a basic need that it's often the first thing to go. So if you're in a situation where you're on a limited income, and obviously food insecurity and hunger is very closely tied to poverty. If you're in a situation where you don't have enough money, you're going to pay your rent first, your mortgage, because you've got to keep your house, your gas to get to your job, whatever it is. The easiest thing to take out of the equation is food. You can say, well, I can go another few days. Or you stretch what limited resources you have, or you feed the children and not yourself. That's what we find happens in so many of our households. And I do need to say that of our clients for Second Harvest, and I'll get more into this when I talk about the statistics between who uses federal services and private nonprofit services like Second Harvest, but the bottom line is 2/3 of our clients have at least one member of the household that works full-time. So they are working families, they're working poor. They just can't make ends meet. So what is Washington doing about it? In 2002, then Governor Christine Gregoire issued an executive order to strengthen Washington's food system overall. And out of that was created the Washington State Food Systems Roundtable. It's a public and private partnership working to achieve a healthy, more coordinated food system. That coalition has put together a 25-year vision for a just and sustainable food system. And their vision is to do 3 things. One of them is to promote the health of the people, not just the end user, the consumer, you and I, but also the farmer and the workers, the people that work the farms and produce our food. Also to address the health impacts of food production all the way from processing to marketing. That's one of the visions of the Washington State Food Systems Roundtable. Another one is to keep it economically vibrant. Food systems maintain and strengthen community assets and local economic development. That's the goal, that's the vision that they're hoping to achieve within 25 years. Farmers and food system workers must earn a living wage. So we can't find ourselves in a situation where the folks providing us the food are going to end up in our food bank lines because they're at low wages and not able to take care of themselves. The third goal of the roundtable is to foster a sustainable and resilient environment, which of course considers where the land, it considers land, soil, and air, and conservation and protection of those resources. Also addresses climate changes and water supply, which is different throughout different areas of the state, depending on what we grow. There are a series of conversations being held across the state under the roundtable, and there's one, they're coming up, most of them are this month and next month. There's one, I think the closest one to Tri-Cities is Yakima. You can go on their website and take a look, and there's one in Spokane as well. So you might have caught this this picture in the video. I love this one. I just put it in again to talk about what are we doing to address hunger, and how do we get food to people who need it. Wouldn't it be nice if it was as easy as looking at a street sign that said meals that way and everybody would be fed? But that's not the case. Love this sign. Brian Planka, our photojournalist, found it as he was on his travels, and I think it was near Ephrata. But I'll show you the next slide. Talks about our federal food assistance programs. There are many of them. I won't go through this line. You can see it online. Many of you may work with different programs through your organizations, but the main ones are SNAP. I'm sure you've heard of that. That is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as food stamps, just given different names throughout the country in different states. TFAP is the Emergency Food Assistance Program that helps supplement the diets of low-income Americans, particularly elderly people, by providing them with emergency food and nutrition assistance at no cost. WIC, most of you have heard of that. That's a program, Food for At-Risk Women and Their Children, Women, Infant, and Children. These three programs are just a few of the many federal programs, and then we have our state programs that are kind of similar, where National has TFAP, Washington State has EFAP, and all of these together, federal programs are the largest and the dominant source of food assistance in our country. By far, federal programs feed more people in this country than any private organization and other groups do. With that said, though, organizations like Second Harvest, private nonprofits, are the second biggest source of food, of hunger relief and food assistance, and we're still massive. So there's a whole federal system. Underneath that is a private system, and we're still not feeding the people and getting them the food that they need. So it's huge. But how we do it locally under programs like Second Harvest is with some of these organizations that you see on the screen now, that you have here in Benton City, or Benton County and Franklin County, places like the Boys and Girls Club. I won't read through all of them, Harvest Outreach. All those organizations in the two counties. Second Harvest is truly, someone said in the video, the food bank's food bank. We are a distribution center. We simply collect resource food and distribute it out to all the wonderful agencies where the clients then go firsthand and receive that food. Under Second Harvest, we did put down farmers markets, grocery rescue, growers, and processors, because those are the people we work with to resource our food. That's how we get it. We have a great, robust program with all the major grocers in the area to basically rescue their food. We call it food rescue because that's what we're doing. We're hitting food waste in this area, and that's a wonderful thing, turning that food around, getting it out to people before it goes bad. It might be near its expiration date. It might be something they test marketed and didn't sell as well as they thought it would be. Whatever it is, we're getting it out of the grocery stores and on the tables of the people that need that food that day. It's a very robust and a great program. We'll take a look real quick at rural hunger. I hope I'm on schedule here. Next slide talks about rural hunger, which is just another form of hunger, but it's getting more and more attention because there's so many areas of the country that have been identified as really areas where hunger and food insecurity are out of control. I said that hunger is related to poverty. 17% of Americans living in rural areas live below the poverty line. So with that, rural hunger is, there's a few differentiations between rural hunger and urban hunger, and basically in rural areas, as you know, employment is more concentrated in low-wage industries. Education levels may be lower. Work support systems like flexible childcare, public transportation are less available. So those areas, those rural areas, and you have many of them around here. We have many of them around Spokane and on up to some of the northern areas in northern parts of eastern Washington, where we see a lot of rural hunger. There's not the resources to get folks food there, which it creates food deserts. And the next slide I'll show a little bit about. These are, this is the fancy, what the government says about what food deserts are. Basically, it's a geographic area where affordable and nutritious food is hard to obtain, generally for lack of transportation. The big trucks that take, the Walmart trucks, the Costco trucks, they're not going to a little town in the middle of nowhere with a population of 100 because there's no store to deliver the food at, and it's not economical for our transportation system to deliver the goods there. So there are many areas that are food deserts in the country, and it's being addressed more and more. Those areas may rely on a quick stop mart where you can get food, but it's processed food or fat-laden foods and not healthy foods whatsoever. So what happened was the government stepped in and said, okay, and it started under First Lady Michelle Obama's movement called Let's Move, if you're familiar with that. That was about 5 years ago. It was her effort to get people moving for the health of our country, so the physical activity end. Then they stepped in more recently and put in the Healthy Food Financing Initiative, which really is the effort to get food to those food desert areas and tackle the food end of health, not just the physical activity end. The goal is to expand the availability of nutritious food to food deserts by developing and equipping grocery stores, small retailers, and corner stores with healthy food. And I just have one example out of the Spokane area. You can have a food desert within an urban area, definitely, and we do, and you see them here too. We have one area of Spokane where a very poor area where most people shop at the convenience store. And so they just get food that's not good at all, but they may not have transportation or ways to get out of there and go to the nearest Safeway, which is more than a mile away. So the health department and a few others got together and stocked that store, that Quick Mart, with fresh fruits, fresh vegetables on a daily basis, and it worked. People bought them. They had to be supplemented on the price because those items are often costly, but people bought them and used them, and it started to make a difference. So there's many efforts like that around the country. Changing the nation's eating habits is another story, but that's, people have to choose those fresh fruits and vegetables if they are available, but more and more they are, and we're providing them. So we're doing our part to get that food out there. Let's see, I think I'll jump ahead. Here we go. That's just a quick snapshot that shows you that we do have food deserts in Washington State, and if you look at the Tri-City area, that green just jumps out. It's all over the place. The definition of what is truly a food desert area is areas where a substantial number of residents, a third of the residents of an area, have low access to a supermarket or a large grocery store. Now, what does low access mean? Low access in an urban setting is defined as within 1 mile. In a rural area, it's 10 miles. So if you look at, the sprawl of America and all the suburbs, there's not grocery stores out there to sustain those areas. So it's an effort to really change what's available so people can get to that food and have access to it. One way that we, being food banks around the country, and particularly Second Harvest, are addressing the food deserts is with our mobile food distributions, and I have a slide on that. Please take a look at this because this is really critical. This is what we're doing to answer that question of what do we do with food deserts. We take great big trucks and take them out to areas, rural areas, and we provide food. People line up if you've ever worked one, and I know many people volunteer and help out at those. We hand out fresh fruits and vegetables and other perishable items like milk, cheese, yogurt. It's really good food. And those are sponsored events where we get the food out to the areas. And look at the numbers. And sorry, this was a little bit of a typo. It looks the same thing. The fiscal year 2016, we distributed almost 315,000 pounds of food to Benton and Franklin County here. So we're getting to some of those deserts. We're trying to address it. Another way to address food deserts on our next slide is with community gardens. And you have many in this area. Most of them are run under WSU's Cooperative Extension Office and the Master Gardeners Program. And I think it's kind of cool to look. Benton County has 36 gardens complete and 3 in progress, and Franklin County has 10 gardens complete, 1 in progress. And the bottom line is these community gardens help fill that need of getting that good, nutritious food to people that need it. And this doesn't include kind of organic gardens, folks that aren't on the radar of these programs, which are funded by United Way funds, by the way, through this to help get that food out there. But there's a lot of organic organizations that, and just backyard gardens who grow fresh produce and bring it to Second Harvest, deliver it to us to get to people that need it. Access to nutrition I think is just, I just like this slide. It's one of the pictures that Brian took as he went around the country. As I said, the area, the state, not the country. We have 12,000 images, but this is a gal sitting on a stairway here, having a bowl of soup or whatever it is. And that's how we get to folks, with mobile food banks, community gardens. And we're very concerned with both of those on not just the food we're providing, but what type of food are we providing. Half of what we distribute through Second Harvest, half is fresh fruits and vegetables. I'll say this about most all food banks, but particularly ours, because I'm most familiar with it. It's not your grandma's food bank. We hand out really good food that will hopefully help change the state of where we are in this nation, the health. I think I can just whip through this because I see my time cue and go to the last slide, I think. And this is, I think, is important. We think it's not in our community. You think hunger is not here. It is. It's right here in Benton and Franklin County. 1 in 9 people are food insecure or at risk of hunger, and that includes 1 in 5 children. You know what it does? It affects your health, absentee rates at work, and sickness in school, and the ability you can't concentrate. So much you can't do when your stomach is growling and you're hungry. So what you can do is help spread the awareness that hunger is real and it's alive here in your community, and volunteer and donate. So with that, I will cut it off here so I don't run too much over. Thank you very much.